work. Before we bring in our guest, we would like to take this moment to thank our sponsors. The first one is Progress Telerik. Telerik supports the developer community with, for example, sponsoring events and streams like this. And the second one is 1337 or 1337. Thank you so much for helping us do things like this. But now, we have a guest.
We do have a guest.
Welcome.
Sorry, I was just digging that music, man. Woo.
It's awesome, right?
I especially like the lyrics. I'm going to be whistling that for a long time. Hi.
And it has really nerdy stuff in as well. Jimmy's first computer was a ZX Spectrum. And it has, what's it called?
So Cura Microspeech. So that was a device that you could connect to the ZX Spectrum. And every time you press something on the computer, it would speak it out, basically.
Wow. Cool.
So
Were you blind then?
I was not, but I did like my vocoders.
Okay. Wow, that's cool. I've never used a vocoder, but I'm a fan.
Vocoders is for Jimmy as blues is for you.
Wow. Wow, that's serious dedication, man.
Vocoders make everything better.
If you say so.
For you. How have you been?
It's been minutes. What have you guys been doing with yourselves? I'm awesome. I'm having a good time here. It's snowing, so we have that in common.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's snowing where you are, but as I look out my loft window right over here, I can see that there's about 3 feet of snow on the ground. You can't see it in the window because we're up really high in this loft.
Naturally.
This building that I'm in is actually really cool. It's got its own name. It's called Stock Footage.
I've been to Pixabay.
Mm-hmm.
That's such a bad joke.
I know.
I'm sorry. We're starting on this level.
Nowhere to go but down. Well, what can I tell you guys?
We're thinking Blazor.
We heard
of that.
Something called Blazor.
Yeah,
I've heard of that. It's good stuff.
You have something to show for us?
I do. Shall I just go right into it? You wanted me to talk about some of the more advanced things you can do in Blazor, stuff that you may not know Blazor can do, or maybe you haven't tried it. So I thought I would start with an application that I wrote based on music to code by, or actually it became music to flow by. Music to code by, just to give you a brief overview, is this stuff that I came up with, 25-minute long pieces that therefore go along with the Pomodoro technique, of pieces that are neither distracting nor boring, but stuff that you can just put on in the background while you're coding, and it doesn't interfere with your thought process. In fact, it encourages a state of flow. And I learned about this by talking to a guy named Mark Seaman from Copenhagen on .NET Rocks, and he was talking about, I brought up music to help you get into the groove, He said there was actually a study that was done where kids that were doing math problems were separated randomly into 2 groups. One group was listening to Baroque music between 60 and 80 beats per minute, and the other had no music. And the ones with the Baroque music that was going on in the background did much better. They did their problems faster. Their comprehension was better. They had less tendency to let their mind wander and that kind of thing. So I decided to keep the 4/4 thing of Baroque music, which, if you know classical Baroque music, is very sort of orderly. And, you have these phrases that go on and on. If you listen to a lot of Bach, for example, and then it all comes together in a nice, neat, tidy bow at the end of the phrase. Dun, 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 dun. That's pretty standard. anyway, knowing that a lot of people probably don't listen to classical music and that it may or may not become distracting, I decided to make some more contemporary sounding music that fit that. So anyway, that became music to flow by because I wanted to branch out to a different audience that was not into coding, because it's really about focusing, right? So I actually have an app that is put out by Libsyn. Why couldn't I remember that? So Libsyn, Liberated Syndication, has this thing where you can subscribe and you get an app, and then you basically can just pull it up on your phone. The iPhone version broke. Apple changed their requirements, and their application got booted out of the App Store. So therefore, my application got booted out of the App Store. So I wanted to use Blazor as a sort of a PWA to talk about, figure out how to deliver this content, on a subscribing basis. And this is just the samples. These are 5-minute samples. But if you look at that URL, you could go there right now. It's MTFB-PWA, Music to Flow by PWA.azurewebsites.net. You can go there now and with your phone or anything else and check it out. Now, there's one caveat on iOS. Apple does not allow PWAs or web pages that play music to play it in the background. That's an Apple thing. It's not a Blazor thing. It's not it's not a PWA thing. So if you go here with your iPhone and you listen to these things, you have to keep it in the foreground. So that kind of sucks. If I wanted, I'd have to create a native application in order to get that background playing thing. But be that as it may, this application, I'll just pull it up here, has these samples, and you can play them, and you can see that there's 21 of them. Also notice this little cached moniker right there. So that means that it's in my cache, and I can't do it right now because we're online. But oh, you know what? I could simulate offline, couldn't I? By going to the network and just changing online to offline. And then I could play this. Says it's cached, but it's obviously not. I know I could play this one because I just cached that one. All right, well, that's a bad demo. Don't do that, Carl. It's probably that these aren't even in the cache, but even though it says it is, it's probably just a bug. So let me just play this here. Yeah. Now you can't hear that, of course, right? But I'm hearing this thing, and it's counting down, and by now it's in the cache. So now if I go to set this to offline and try it again, it's still playing because it's cached. In fact, it's where I left off. And if I go here, I'm going to get a problem because I'm offline. But now if I go back, I'm hearing it no problem. So the whole idea is that I want this to work when you're offline as well, and therefore download things to a cache, download these MP3 files to a cache and play them when you're cached. So I want to sort of talk about PWAs in general, and this is my Blazor WebAssembly application that when you create it, you can say, I want this to be a PWA. And you can see, because I have 3 projects, that this is an ASP.NET Core hosted application. So I have a server, and that's where my audio files are right there, cleverly named 1.mp3 through 21. And I actually have 22 and 23 there. Those are just like little test things. But the real magic is here in the web root for a PWA. First of all, the obligatory manifest JSON. This just has the metadata for your application, what your icon is, your colors, all that stuff. There's nothing really exciting there. The exciting part is this service worker, and you get 2. You get one for just when you're not a PWA or working in Visual Studio or whatever, and you get one, that's when it's published. But this one does also work in Visual Studio. But I've made a couple of modifications here. First of all, this offline cache name, I hard-coded to MTFB PWA. It's going to have something different. It basically makes a calculated string based on the version of the manifest and all of that stuff. But I want to access this cache by name in another file. So that's why I don't have this stuff here. That's why I don't, I want to access this PWA cache in my JavaScript code. So I don't want to have to ask this code, what is that name? I'm just going to set it to something I know. I also added MP3 as a file type that I want to cache. And then everything else pretty much in here is exactly the same. You've got your onFetch event, which happens and it looks in the cache. And if the cache has it in there, it's going to return it from the cache, right? But here's the thing. Just because you played an MP3 file, that's not enough for it to go into the cache. And the caching system here is different from the PWA system. The PWA stuff, like this stuff that it's caching by default, is all the stuff that your application needs, right? But my application is a little bit different because, check this out. I'm going to go into index. And I've got all my tracks here. Let's go down to on parameters set async. So look at this. I'm using local storage. So first of all, I'm using an API service to get my tracks. In other words, this is just a service that's calling an API, get tracks on the server. That controller just has a tracks controller, and that's using a tracks manager. And the track manager just simply has all the tracks added to a list. So it's very simple, right? It's just hard-coded stuff here. I'm not using a database. All right, back at index. If my tracks is null or the track count is 0, that means I'm offline, something like that. I want to go to local storage, and I'm using for local storage Blazor local storage. This is Chris Sainty's local storage wrapper. Local storage, it turns out, is really easy to do with JavaScript interop. It's like literally 1 or 2 lines of code, but I like having a Blazor component for that, so that's what I use, and it's free. So I'm getting all tracks because that's how I saved it, and then I can deserialize that. So first of all, this is how you handle offline data. If you have a set of data, a data set that you need on load, as long as it's not bigger than 5 gigs, which I think is or is it 5 megs? It's 5 megs, not gigs. Wow. Yeah, 5 megabytes is the limit for local storage. So you can put that there. Interestingly, the Blazor server has a feature called protected local storage in .NET 5, but it's only for Blazor server, and that encrypts everything. Otherwise, you could just go to your network and see this data getting saved and getting retrieved. It's in plain text, but I don't care. These are just tracks, right? There's no secrets here, which is good. So then going through the tracks, and I'm calling a JavaScript method isFileCached. So that brings me to JavaScript, and that is in my index HTML, where I've added some JavaScript. And you can see I've got the cache name in there, the same one that the Blazor template is using, because I want to hook into that, right? I've got this global variable file name as the currently playing file. I've got .NET reference, which you need in order to call back from JavaScript. And now all my methods right here. So is online, we'll skip over this stuff, and is cached, is file cached, just has a little JavaScript that returns a Boolean whether that file is cached or not. And that's apparently what failed the first time I ran this demo, but because my browser thought it was in the cache, but it really wasn't. So as you can see, tricky. JavaScript sucks. I suck. Let's move on.
Do you need to use JavaScript to get the cache, to talk to the cache, basically?
Exactly, and that's why I did this. So check this out. So in the index, let's go back to the index here. I have a player. Right, here's my audio tag, and ID is player, and the source is player source. Okay, so I don't have a bunch of players. I have one player, and it's kind of hidden. You don't really see it. And then in here, I've got my UI for playing and the time left and the error message and all that stuff. So there's not really any audio happening in each one of these things. And if the track is cached, then I tell it it's cached. But that audio thing is important. So here we go. When I play audio file, which is going to happen here, here's my play. Here's my current track. And I'm checking to see if the cache is track is cached, right? And if not, and I'm not online, I have an isOnline function in JavaScript that I can easily tell whether I'm online or not. Then I say you have to go online to play non-cached audio. If we're good to go, I'm calling this play audio file. All right. And I'm passing that .NET object reference. So that's where things get fun. Play audio file. All right. So here's my URL base and my ID, which I'm gonna use to get the name of the file, like 1.mp3, etc. And I get that file name. And then I can call my local is cached to see if it's in the cache. And if it's not cached, I add it to the cache. But I have to do that manually. And now I can play, right? I have to add it to the cache myself. It's not going to be added just by playing the audio. And that's the thing that I learned in doing this demo here. So now I have a couple of listeners, and I have a Boolean that tells me if I've hooked it yet or not. I only want to hook it once during the life cycle of this page. And so here's my add event listener ended, which happens when it ends and stops. And here's the time update that happens when I have progress, right? And then this is all that I need to play it. I just set the audio source as the URL and load and play. If the audio source is different from the last URL, then I set the source. Otherwise, I want to pause it and continue playing where I started. So, this .NET reference is then calling into my C# code a method called progress that updates the timer and all that, and stopped, which happens at the end of it. So let's look at those. Here's progress. And I basically come up with, this time left or whatever, and I show that string in, to count down the time every second. And stopped, what's cool about stopped is I want to know when it stops because I want to play the next track. And so that's what all this blah, blah, blah is right there. And when I have this added to cache that I call back when something is played and then added to the cache. So I'm going to run this. What I was running before was the one that was online, but I'll run this one first and I'll just remove everything from the cache. Empty the cache. Let me see. How did I do this before? Empty cache and hard refresh. It still says it's cached. F12. Let's go to network. Disable the cache. Do this again. Why does it say that it's in the cache? I don't know. I don't know. All right. Well, we'll go to one that
want it to be.
Yeah, we'll go to one that definitely isn't in the cache, and I'll play it. All right. So it took between when I clicked play, and this cached showed up for it to actually go into the cache. All right.
That's pretty fast.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's all local too, right? So that's why. So now I'll go to offline. I'll try to play this one, and it says you must go online to play non-cached audio. And if I go here, it continues where obviously I have a little bug there, but you get the idea. So
the application, that's WebAssembly.
Yeah.
And then you have a server side as well where you have the MP3s.
Yep, I have the MP3s there, and I have my controller that gives me all the data. And if I'm offline, I get the metadata, and I get everything like that, and I can play everything that is cached. But only if I'm offline, I can play only what's in the cache. I can't play, I can't play things that are not in the cache. But that's good because, if you guys wanted to make a podcast player, a PWA for your podcast, you could do it just like this. In fact, this code is out there on Blazor Train. You can download it and modify it, and now people can listen when they get on a plane. Like that ever is going to happen again.
What are those planes you're talking about?
What is this plane? Yes. Yeah.
I have a vague recollection of planes.
Right. So that's the first thing I wanted to talk about. The second thing is using Signalr, using your own Signalr Hub to synchronize CRUD operations. So Signalr, we know, is being used by Blazor Server under the hood to get messages about UI updates to and from the browser and the server, right? But you can add your own Signalr Hub, just like you can in any .NET Core application. And you can use that for anything you want, to do messages that either go from one client to all the rest of the clients, or client to client, or broadcast to all clients. Yep, blazortrain.com. Thank you. And I thought it might be really cool to hook anytime that I make a CRUD update, a CRUD call. In other words, not to retrieve, but to update, to add, or delete, right? Updates, adds, and deletes. I want to basically send a message that I did that, and here's the action that I did, and here's the ID, the primary key of the field of the record that I made that change to. And so with that information, I can subscribe to those messages on all the clients, and when I get one, I can decide whether or not I want to take action. So for example, let's say that you and I are both editing a set of data with a bunch of names, and one of the persons in my list, you open that person's record and you want to change their name. Well, I want that change to happen immediately in my list, because if I go and edit something, I want that data to be current. So a long time ago, when we learned about ADO.NET in .NET and beta, basically, you remember the data adapter? And the data adapter had this feature where it would tell you if there was a problem updating something that had been updated underneath you, right? And so basically to avoid collisions. But it's not really avoiding collisions. It's taking action to let you know you can't do that because a collision would occur, right? So that's different than avoiding collisions altogether. And Bill Vaughn summed it up very nicely in an early .NET Rocks when he says, it's kind of like the New York City Transit Authority showing up at an intersection and saying, all right, where are we going to stack the bodies? Right? So this is a preventative measure to avoid, I know, terrible, right? But funny. This is a preventive measure to avoid collisions when two people are working on the same set. Now, you may not choose to refresh your data when you get this message because your user doesn't have that set open or that record open or whatever. But it's up to you. You can basically get notified. So let's go back to my happy Visual Studio here. And I think this is the right one. No, that's my PWA. Let me close that. All right, so I got another one here. Come on. There you go. And this is also from Blazor Train. This is a basic application that is also a client, a WebAssembly with a server and a shared folder. And this is one that I used to show off how to, use the repository pattern to do both an API repository on the client and a data EF repository on the server, and how to set up your controllers with these API entity response and list of entity response things. So it's a really good demo just in general as far as how to do data access in Blazor. But then I use this to also show my this synchronization feature. So what I'll do is I'll get a completely different browser up here. This is Edge on the left, Chrome on the right. And I'm going to click on Maria Anderson, and you can see I've already changed Maria Anderson's name. This is the Northwind database, and everybody knows that it's Maria Anders, right? So watch over here what happens when I update. Boom, just like that.
That's nice.
And yeah, and I can add a customer. Let's add a customer over on this side. And what that did is it added Carl Franklin to the bottom here. And so you can see that nothing happened over here. Isn't that funny? Carl Franklin must be in there.
Yeah, I see.
Oh yeah, it's in there.
Yeah.
All right, it's just in a different place. Okay. So then if I delete Carl Franklin over here, let's look for him over here. Not there, right? So add, edit, and delete. Yeah, there I am. And there I am.
Nice.
Delete here, deletes there. All right, so this is sort of what we're doing with Signalr. So let me show you how it works under the hood. And I'm going to start with, let me close this. On the server side, the startup. You have to add Signalr as a service. On the server, that you don't have to have any kind of NuGet package or anything like that. You just, because it's already built in to .NET Core, right? Or .NET 5 in this case. So any server you can just add Signalr to like that. I've also created a hub, a Signalr hub, and I've got to call map hub in endpoints right there for data hub. Data hub is in my hubs folder right there. And I've just got one method, sync record, the table, the action, and the ID. And then I'm sending that to everybody else. Okay. So as far as the client goes, you do have to add Microsoft ASP.NET Core Signalr client in order to, hook that hub to be able to send messages to the hub and get messages from the hub. So let's see how that works in Index. I'm going to start at, I usually put my on initialized at the bottom. So here's my hub that I'm creating, and I've injected this HTTP client here. Also a good idea, and I think you get this by default. You get the base address. So that is already a scoped service. So all I'm doing is injecting that HTTP client at the top, right? So I get the HTTP client for the base address, and then I use Data Hub. So this is my URL to my hub. And I have just one method on receive sync, which takes 3 strings. And we'll go there in a second. Then I'm just going to start it up. So let's go to on receive sync. So this happens when somebody else has made a change. And now all I have to do is parse that, what it is. If customers is the table and the action is not delete, that means something has changed. I'm going to refresh my customer list. Obviously, the brute force method, you can be as granular as you want here. However, if it is delete, now I'm going to go through my customers and just remove the one that has been deleted. Easy. And in terms of when that happens, let's do this change here. So here's add customer, and I'm creating my, fake record here. And I'm using my customer manager to insert that into the database. And I'm adding the customer to my local record. And now I'm updating the other clients with sync record, customers add, and with the customer ID. Cool. And as far as the rest of these, I have can I add a customer if my customer doesn't already exist. Customer selected, update, the same idea. I'm calling update on my data CRUD thing, and now I'm calling sync record update. And delete customer is the same way. If I delete it and I was able to delete it, then I tell everybody that I deleted it. So, it's pretty freaking simple, but a very powerful feature to implement. And, like I said before in our podcast, this isn't the best way to do things, but it's an easy to understand way to do things. If you wanted to, you could probably move all this stuff into your manager, but it just becomes more complex that way. So anyway,
when is it good to do your own hub like that? That's some of the use cases.
Oh, okay. Well, so it's basically Signalr is really great for these sort of broadcast one to everyone else or everyone, including me, messages that the canonical example is like a chat, right? It'd be kind of difficult to sort of retrofit Blazor servers Signalr features to that. The thing that comes to mind that I would have to do, what I would have to do in order to do that myself, is I'd have to have a static singleton, right, that everybody can send messages to and from. I'd have to have some event handling, so I'd have to be notifying. And I'd also have to know when people are no longer on, when people are no longer online. So I have to have some sort of keep alive thing, and now I have to prune the users. I've done that. It's not good. It's not pretty. You don't want to do that. So basically anytime, and you have to use Signalr if you want to do this kind of thing with a WebAssembly application, because there is no server Signalr to hitch a ride to. So it's basically, notifications. Anytime that you want to be notified that another user is doing something or is online or is something has changed. The way that I did this demo is a little creepy because things just disappear, or change right before your eyes. You have no idea what happened, right? Typically, the experience is more like Google Documents or Office 365, when you have collaboration going on and you've got two people working on the same document, and you can actually see based on a color code where they are in the document with their little name that hovers over it. And so you get, there's no surprises. Things just don't creepily change. So that's the magic of Signalr, is being able to collaborate and work on the same thing at the same time and make changes and refresh those changes. I've even done in our podcast application that I use behind the scenes, the admin app that I wrote. I gave Richard and I the ability to update bios and descriptions and all of that stuff just on keystroke. So you're in a text area and you're typing somebody's bio or the show description, and I just see it changing, or he just sees it changing. Because it's just the two of us working on the thing, so it doesn't need to be elaborate, but yeah.
Puts a whole nother spin on ghostwriting, doesn't it?
Ghostwriting, yeah.
The really cool thing with all of this is with, I believe it was like 5 to 10 lines of code. We have a server connected to the client. We can send updates from the client to the server and from the server to the client. And the most important part, no JavaScript.
Yes. Unlike the PWA thing that I really had to go into JavaScript in order to get that to work. But that's kind of JavaScript that I kind of like, because it's not like just regular run-of-the-mill stuff that I have to do in my application every day. It's pretty specialized. But yeah, the less I have to do in JavaScript, the happier I am.
Well, you're both .NET developers and predominantly C#, so I get that.
That. Yep. So all of these things you can see and download the code at blazortrain.com. And if you have any questions, let me know. I would like to talk about. I would like to answer some questions. I do have another thing that I can show you.
Please do.
Yeah, and it's back in the PWA thing. So let me load that up. You see this JS invocable. Go ahead.
Yeah. I was meaning to ask, you mentioned that in the manifest you added MP3 as a file type that it was going to cache.
In the
but
service
you handled
worker.
the caching. Yeah, server worker. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
But you handled the caching yourself. Do you have to have the MP3 there?
Yes, you do, because this is telling the cache that I need to include MP3s. If this wasn't there, I wouldn't be able to manually add it to the cache, I believe.
Okay.
I believe. I think all of these things go into the cache automatically because they're downloaded, right? Where we're going through an audio player and setting the source to whatever. We're not just downloading it. It's not downloaded as part of the application.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So the thing that I wanted to show here is actually a little JavaScript gotcha that I found. Initially, when I had, see this .NET reference right here? Initially, when I had I had this code right here. Right? I already said it. Why do I have to set it again? So this causes all sorts of problems. Because if, let's say I have another page, I navigate away from index, go to counter, let's say, and then back to index, this .NET reference is passed in as another instance, as the first instance of that page, not the current instance. In other words, every time I call play audio file, I pass a .NET object from my page. Where's play audio file? Yeah, play right here. Play audio file. I'm getting this .NET object reference create from this. This is the component, right? As soon as I go to counter, that goes away. This object is now dead. And the next time I come in, this is going to return a different instance, right? So just because you've disposed your C# instances doesn't mean that any of these things get disposed. They stick around. JavaScript is in its own space. So you have to set these things, global variables that you're going to use every single time. You can't just think of it like, oh, I already got that, so I don't need it again. Nope.
That's a really good tip. Do you have any other things?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I just did a Blazor. Yeah, I did a Blazor train. Here, let me go back here. Did a Blazor train episode where I did a sort of a call-in show, like a Q&A kind of thing, where I took people's questions, and in reality, the questions that I got weren't good enough, so I made up my own, and I made up people because it's all about the show. Ask the engineer. Yeah, so this one right here is where I showed those tips, and that's a good one. And it's 20 minutes long, so it's pretty quick.
Awesome. So for those of you who are following us on our podcast, we just recorded an episode with Carl with, it's a lot of good things. I think it will come out. Well, let's see. What day is it today?
Are you trying to count in your head?
Yeah.
How's that going for you?
It's Tuesday the night.
Bad.
In a week or two is what he's trying to say.
Actually, I think it's about. I think it's 1st of March. We have one episode in
the pipeline. Yeah. Okay. So wrong of me.
Okay.
But we had a lot of fun on the show.
Oh yeah, we always have fun.
So how often do you do Blazor train?
Every week. I took a couple weeks off around the holidays, but it's been every week since. And sometimes I don't make Friday, so I publish on Monday, and then I come back again on that Friday. But I try to do one a week.
That's nice.
Yeah, it's good. It's good
how's
topics.
the response been?
Excellent. Yeah, very good. A constant barrage of kudos from people who really like it, and there's a lot of just general good Blazor stuff there, and that's I find it. Yeah, I think my job there is to just sort of do the dirty work and try to figure out stuff that people could figure out, but it might take them some time. Yeah, and I also
and that's what I like about it.
Yeah, the things I don't know.
It's smaller videos.
Yeah, right. Snackable. The things that I don't know myself or don't have experience with, and I sometimes pull other guests in to talk about them. Like the Microsoft guys, I'm always having them on to talk about new stuff.
That's nice. Snackable. I like that.
Yeah. Info snacks.
Info snacks. Those are carb free, aren't they?
Absolutely. Nothing but electrons.
Calorie free. Oh my gosh. That's horrible. Yep. What's the most surprising thing you have come across when working with Blazor?
Surprising thing. Well, first of all, I'm still blown away at how smoothly the Blazor server infrastructure works. To just get rid of all that UI code nobody ever wants to do. But I was really surprised at first, when Blazor first came out, the number of people who have JavaScript teams that were livid. They were angry. They were like, why would I want to use this when I've invested, hundreds of thousands of dollars in my JavaScript team, and we're doing Angular and it's great, and why do I need this? And the answer is you don't.
Yeah.
If you have got your investment in your JavaScript team and everything's working good and you like it and they like it and they're productive, great. You don't need this. It's really a UI framework using C# instead of JavaScript. That's what it is.
Yeah. Which means the C# developers don't have to, they can do what they're best at, writing C#.
Right. And I find most of the gotchas that I've uncovered have to do with that interop between JavaScript and C#. Like I just showed you, that's a perfect example. We tend to think of JavaScript as being in the same memory space for some reason, but it's not.
How often do you find yourself, you've been working with Blazor for a while now. How often do you find yourself having to write JavaScript?
It depends. Usually I write JavaScript when I want to, not when I have to, but sometimes you have to. I'm working on this thing that does docking with sliders a la Windows Forms. And so, sliders, you get these compartments on your screen, you set them up. In Windows Forms, you'd use like anchoring and docking, right? And so you'd have a panel here and a panel over here, and maybe a horizontal splitter here, vertical splitter here. So that is like all JavaScript. Yeah. So that's but that's a rare exception. That's something that isn't there in Blazor, and probably for good reason. But yeah, I'm always Googling or Binging, how to do this in JavaScript, and then writing wrappers around it for stuff that I can't do in Blazor. But that's just the right level of JavaScript for me.
Yeah.
And I really liked your sample because I think many would be tempted to, when you played a MP3, they would just go to JavaScript and do everything there. But you actually did have, you called JavaScript and you had JavaScript call back into .NET.
Yeah.
I mean, the stopped event, for example, it would work just as fine to have it in JavaScript and play the next file.
Right.
But I think that is I think that is the difference between writing Blazor and JavaScript app. You need to actually pull those things back to Blazor.
Right. Yeah. The things that you can't do in Blazor, you do in JavaScript, and then they can call you back. So that's the hybrid approach that's perfect for me.
There's a lot of plugins as well. People like Sainty, for example, that have made really great plugins. So you don't have to write. If you want to talk to local storage, there probably someone who's done that.
Right. I want to show you one thing if I can. Get it ready here, and then I'll switch over. So DevExpress, as you know, is the sponsor of Blazor Train, and I don't usually talk about their stuff on the show, but they do have one really, they have a lot of great things, but they have one immediately amazing tool that you should get called the Blazor Scheduler. So look at this. It's like this is a live Blazor application, by the way. It's like dropping Google Calendar into your web project. Look at this stuff. All the recursive things, creating a new right here, and then you can move this around, move it down, of course, and double click on any of these, and then you can edit. All right. And this is, look at the code for this. That's it. You have your scheduler, you got your storage, and the code. It's like,
that's so nice. And it's fast.
Yeah.
I think it might be faster than my mail client.
That's because your mail client is JavaScript.
No, I meant my application, but okay.
Right.
Could be JavaScript.
Might be.
So I love the fact that Microsoft has created this a new market for controls again that are very much, along the lines of Windows WPF controls in terms of how easy they are to use and implement. But now for the web, it blows my mind.
I've been writing my own grid for Blazor, and I learned so much. And the way everything is built up by components, you can have components in components and so on. It's so easy to get things done.
It's so easy. Yeah.
We hear a lot of, this can't be it.
Right.
Do you mean this is? No.
I know.
Line of code? There's a lot of comments like that.
I showed Joel
But I don't
Hewlin.
understand.
I showed my good friend and colleague Joel Hewlin Blazor binding for the first time. He had never seen it, and he agreed to come live on Blazor Train and give his opinion. He's done Angular, Vue, React, like all of these things at one point or time, and he was just completely blown away. He was like, "Wow!" It's like, that's it. Yeah, just like you were saying. Yeah, where's all the rest of the stuff?
Yeah.
I mean, both you and I assume you love Blazor, but is there any kind of application that is not you should never use Blazor for?
All right. Well, yeah. So I think you want to talk about scaling, uh, you know, and costs, right?
Mm.
So if you want something that's going to scale a la Facebook, Twitter, that kind of thing, first of all, I would want to wait until .NET 6 comes out, where we have ahead of time compiling, first of all. And second of all, I would want to use a static web application, which is a WebAssembly application and Azure function on the back end to handle all the back end stuff. And of course, Azure functions scale pretty much indefinitely, infinitely. I think that's they scale, yeah, and they're cost effective, right? And so if you can put your back end stuff in an Azure function, now you can distribute that Blazor application, that WebAssembly application, on a CDN, a content delivery network, and save a lot of money and get it to your users quickly. And that's going to scale, just like the best of any Angular or Vue or whatever application, probably even better. Blazor Server, however, is easier to get going and easier to start up, and you don't have to have an API layer and all that kind of stuff. But you're limited by the size of the machine that the virtual machine you're running on, in terms of power and mostly in terms of memory. But Microsoft did some tests, and they found that a basic VM with, and by VM I don't mean with UI, I just mean the app service, the virtual machine that runs the app service with, I think it was 1 virtual CPU and 4 gigs of RAM, 4.5 gigs of RAM, something like the 4 gigs of RAM, could support 5,000 concurrent users comfortably before the latency got above 200 milliseconds between when you click a button and you see a response. But if you up that to, say, 4 cores and 14 gigs of RAM, now you can support up to 20,000, right? Any more than that, you're going to have to use, well, first of all, you should be using, for server, Azure Signalr service, which takes the heat off of your single virtual machine for just doing the Signalr part of Blazor, which is a lot of it, right? But then you can also have multiple servers in a farm, right? And the affinity, the stickiness is on by default. So that means somebody comes with a load balancer, comes to one of your servers, it ensures that they get that server every time they go back. So your state doesn't explode on you and all of that. So with that, you can scale up Blazor Server, but it's going to take more resources, obviously, and it's going to be more expensive. So I think, for me, the holy grail of ultimately scalable Blazor application is going to come in November, when we have AOT ahead of time, compiling for WebAssembly, and the combination of that and an Azure static web app. And we just talked about static web apps on Blazor Train with Jeff Fritz, and on .NET Rocks with Jeff Fritz also.
Nice.
And we know him.
We know him. He's friend of the show.
Good guy, Jeff.
Yeah, he's fun.
Definitely.
Yep.
All people aren't super happy about Blazor, though. You mentioned the JavaScript people. There were some mumbles, but we also
JavaScript people.
No, they're okay. They're just different people.
Yeah.
But we got a comment when we went on Twitter and announced this show. You have the
Yeah. So there was a guy that
Oh, the Blazor
really didn't
PWA
like.
guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Spam.
But he talked about, well, the first thing he talked about was that he had an infuriating experience with the password manager, and I assume that they just implemented it wrong. But the other one was that it makes it easier to find and install the apps, but they ignore the fact that decentralized distribution makes it impossible to weed out people abusing PWA to make malicious programs. Is malicious programs a problem with PWA?
I think malicious programs are a problem with any kind of development technology, PWA or not. I mean, what's the difference between that and just a regular web application?
Yeah.
Really, there isn't any difference except for one goes in your home screen.
Yeah. Does PWA have more access to things than any other JavaScript app or a web app?
No. I mean, you have access to the cache, obviously, and you can cache things, but in terms of the sandbox, you can't reach outside of the sandbox any more than you can if it wasn't a PWA.
I think it's like you said, Jimmy. He had a bad experience with an application that implemented stuff not optimally for him, and maybe that just stuck with him as it's Blazor or PWA's fault or something.
You know, I'm like any good scientific mind. I would love to be proven wrong, but it is my understanding, as far as I know, there isn't anything about a progressive web application that makes it any less secure than a standard web application is. I mean, you saw the only difference is that service worker, and the service worker is JavaScript, and JavaScript has access to certain things, and it doesn't have access to other things. So just because it's a PWA doesn't mean it can reach into your file system and change your system files and screw up your computer. You know, like I say, I'd like to be proven wrong. I'd like to see a test case where it is actually dangerous, but so far, I mean, I don't think that's going to happen. But bring it on.
I'm so curious about this password manager and how they screwed him over according to him. I really want to know what the issue was. And not because he said it, because how can it make someone that furious? I'm really curious about that part.
I would like to see that.
I mean,
too.
I've been really furious at applications as well, but
they're usually JavaScript applications.
That's you guys.
Is there any security concerns when it comes to WebAssembly in Blazor?
Oh no, WebAssembly wouldn't be accepted by every single browser that you can use right now. Every single browser that you can use that is still being worked on, and IE stopped at 11. That was before WebAssembly, so that doesn't work, right? So that's fine. But no, they all embrace WebAssembly, and it isn't just for C#. There's so many languages that work in WebAssembly: Rust, Go, Python, I think, Erlang. Like, there's so many languages that have compilers for WebAssembly. But the thing that makes C# different and Blazor different is that the only thing right now in the current version that's not ahead of time, the only thing that is pure WebAssembly is the runtime. And so the runtime, just like the runtime in x86, x64, whatever, Linux, Windows, whatever, it downloads those DLLs and runs them inside the CLR. Well, we can take those same DLLs and now run them in the CLR that's running in WebAssembly. So there's, if WebAssembly, by the way, is an island. The only way that it can reach out to the DOM is via JavaScript. So it basically has this side door with a JavaScript handler, and that JavaScript handler is the only way that WebAssembly and JavaScript can communicate. So there's like one window where they can pass the fries over. You know what I'm saying? And if you're not in line at that window, that's it. So, and then JavaScript can only do so much with the DOM, right? And other things. So therefore, WebAssembly has the same exact, if not more, security boundaries than JavaScript has. It's just technically not an issue.
And that's a really good point, because that is also the reason why we are using JavaScript to talk to the local storage or to the cache and stuff like that.
Yep.
But then again, according to CSI Cyber, you can actually be an arson by that was HTML injection.
Yeah.
That was not JavaScript injection.
HTML injection into the printer.
Yeah. And they burned down the houses. Yeah, true story. It's
No, it's not.
No, it's not.
It's
made up story for CSI Cyber. We could not, for the life of us, not see.
Oh, you're talking about a
CSI
TV
Cyber.
show.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay, I was wondering where did this...
Fantastically horrible. and I wouldn't want to be that person that is on the roster saying this person was the tech person. What do you call it?
Technical advisor.
Yeah, exactly.
I love it when people are at a computer and they say they're going to download all their data into the computer. Or they're going to download their data onto the server. Oh, really? Is that how that works? I can imagine, early scientists watching Star Trek, and just like going, My favorite
things on Star Trek actually made it to the real world.
Right, that's true. But, I'm still waiting for them to be able to uncouple the Heisenberg compensators. That would be that's my favorite technical mumbo jumbo line from Star Trek Next Generation. It was Moriarty. He was living in the holodeck and he became, I guess, Geordi basically wanted to create a foe that could outsmart Data. Oops. That's pretty intelligent. So the thing took over and they fooled him into thinking that they could uncouple the Heisenberg compensators and that would allow him to go travel outside the holodeck. It's the best.
The fun you can have watching TV shows. Yeah.
For those who are listening to our podcast, we also always have a question, Marvel or DC. But now I'm a little bit curious. Star Wars or Star Trek?
I like them both. Love Star Wars. Love Star Trek. Yeah.
But if you have to choose.
No, there's no choosing. There's just watch.
There is no choose. Same with Marvel and DC.
Spoiler.
Yeah. Well.
Watch or do not watch. There is no choose.
So what would you say? Star Trek or Star Wars?
Why are we turning this on me?
We are turning this on you because someone has to choose.
I can offer a little more insight here. I like Star Wars for reasons other than mindless space entertainment, which, by the way, it's awesome for that. I mean, you like space fights and, villains and stuff. And Star Trek is plenty of that. Star Trek gets a little cerebral sometimes, but of course, there's so much more content in the Star Trek world. But Star Wars, I really was drawn to. And then I learned about the guy who wrote the book that inspired George Lucas to write Star Wars. And that guy is Joseph Campbell. And he's dead now. He died in the 80s. There's a PBS interview with him with Bill Moyers called The Power of Myth. and it takes place at Skywalker Ranch. So he was a good friend of George Lucas. He wrote a book called The Hero with 1,000 Faces. And he basically talked about the hero story in mythologies all over the world that sort of developed at, similar time periods without any interaction between these societies. So, you can intuit, you can infer, I think, you can infer that therefore these stories come from us and our experience as humans. And so they sort of like a map into the human condition. And the hero story has the same sequence of events or the same pattern, whether it's Beowulf or, whether it's a Star Trek thing or Star Wars or whatever, that repeats itself over and over again. And so the hero story, George basically said, we're going to do a hero story in space using all these archetypical symbolism and, all these things that people will identify with immediately because they're in the collective unconscious of humanity. And so he was really smart that, he sort of tapped into these deeply symbolic things in patterns, and then just turned it into Hollywood blockbuster. So yeah, I'm really, really like Star Wars for that. Star Trek.
Fredrik says that Star Trek, in my view, has constantly higher quality.
Okay.
Well, then we have some offshoots in Star Trek as well.
Yeah.
There's we
yeah,
don't
it's
talk
kind of
about
hard
Enterprise.
Yeah, we don't talk about Enterprise.
No. And I don't mean the ship Enterprise. I mean the
series with Scott Bakula. Yeah. And the newest
lyrics. The intro song had lyrics.
Well, so does Voyager. So
No,
there's a guy on YouTube that has put lyrics to all of the Next Generation, Voyager. I think, even
Bill Murray did that with It's Star Wars.
That's true.
So you're still avoiding the question.
Am I?
Yeah, you are. So are you sleeping in the bed or are you sleeping on the couch?
I believe I am sleeping on the couch.
Yeah, okay. So he picked Star Trek. No, I'm just kidding.
Star Wars.
Star Wars.
So let's face it. When I'm in front of automatic doors, Star Trek is not going to open them.
Yeah, that is true. Because those would be automatic in Star Trek. So you actually have to work for it in Star Wars.
So we were talking.
He's actually choosing Star Wars, even though we had a Star Trek themed wedding.
Wow.
Yeah, just saying.
So, I was talking about Mondays earlier, and Mark Miller does this bit called People Dumber Than Me. People making the news who are dumber than him, and he figures if they're dumber than him, they're probably also dumber than you, and will therefore make you feel a little bit better about yourself. So one of the shows we did was the Star Wars show, and it was we called people in the line at Star Wars line at Grauman's Chinese Theater, like we call the payphone. And one of the best lines from that was a guy who tried to rob a convenience store in a Darth Vader costume. So think about it. I mean, can you describe the suspect? But he referred to this guy as the little orphan Annie gone bad.
Oh, that's perfect.
Isn't that, we just laugh forever.
That's
the little orphan Annie gone bad.
The Enterprise theme is the reason Netflix invented skip intro. Yes!
Excellent.
That is true.
That must be true. Grogu. Grogu is cute. I don't mind Star Wars. He doesn't mind Star Trek. I was going to say the other way around here.
What do you think hardcore Star Wars people thought about the Muppets invading the Star Wars character set? And I'm talking about Yoda and Frank Oz, who did the voice of Miss Piggy, doing the voice of Yoda, and the way that they sort of move.
I just love that they went back to puppets in the 7, 8, and 9 movies, or
you like that
one Yoda's was in.
Yeah.
Because the computer generated ones in 1, 2, and 3. No.
No.
Uncanny Valley.
No, I could not compute that. There was like this rubber ball green, like Slimer, when he had in the cartoon, he got some, I don't know, he was hungry or something, it was just bouncing around. No.
I guess
Muppets
you're right.
awesome.
What's not to like
Star
about
Wars
Muppets?
awesome.
I was just waiting for the Swedish chef to pop up from behind the X-wing and start pelting him with rosemary rolls. Bort.
You know that's a true story, right? The
What?
Swedish chef. It's
No,
based
what?
on a Swedish chef.
Oh, I believe it.
Real life Swedish chef. Yeah.
I've eaten at Swedish restaurants where I saw that guy.
Yeah, he has made a career out of that. So apparently he was on American morning show, and he was supposed to cook, and he did not speak Swedish, and we don't even we can't even make out a word from what he's saying, and he did not speak English, and he got so stage frightened that he was just
Fergie, dirty, burgy, flooping, flirting.
So Jim Henson called him up and like, can I make a Muppet out of you? So there you go. True story.
I gotta find this meme. Let me just find it. I can do it in 2 seconds. It's the best. It's the best. It's a Swedish chef meme. And it's basically I don't know. It's like I don't always flare the flip the elite the flip, but when I do, I flare the fleet send the flip the blue go flip the flooping. I just
you do a better
Swedish
chef than we do.
I just remember
because
flirty
he doesn't
flooping.
speak Swedish.
There we go.
For me, it sounds more Dutch.
I don't always hurdy der mer flipty flooping, but when I do, I hear the schmer door here the foopty der shoot the flirty der.
That's Dutch to me.
Oh my god!
But
I'm actually of
that's the
Swedish
Swedish
descent,
chef.
believe it or not. My mother's family comes from the Swedish area of Finland, so we feel that heritage quite strongly. We have glurg every Christmas, or we used to.
Oh yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yep.
Do you have any other Swedish traditions?
Well, we used to play Seven Little Houses card game. Do you know about that?
No.
No? Okay. And ginger snaps and
Yeah, those are different from gingerbreads.
yeah. Meatballs, of course.
Of course. Of course.
Yeah. I remember having dinner at Magnus Martinson's house during an hors d'oeuvre. Well, you guys were there, weren't you?
Yeah.
You must have been. And he had a speaker's dinner with and his wife created all those amazing meatballs.
She made a lot of meatballs.
Yeah. It was delish. And everything else too.
Those were the days. Yeah.
Yeah, you remember that? You remember traveling? Remember dinner with people? Yeah, that was so awesome.
Remember people? More like remember people, not digital flat people, but actual 3D people.
Yeah.
I think today was the first day we actually had someone in our home.
Yes. That was very
since
strange.
March.
Yeah. Almost a year ago. Yeah. No, what you mean we had people here in March?
Saying that.
The janitor maybe or something. I don't know. I'm
saying March was a cutoff.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, that was strange. So before we recorded a podcast. So this is a person I've been learning how to drive with. So we were already contaminated or whatever you want to call it. So we invited him here to record a podcast, and before he rang the door, Jim was like, "How do you do nowadays? Do you say hello? Do you shake hand? What?
I don't know.
I don't remember."
Do you touch foot or what?
Yeah.
What?
Well,
How do
it's
you do
like,
these
elbow.
things? Yeah.
No, you just say hello.
Did you see Scott Hanselman's meme about, you know, the awkward way to sign off? It's awkward signing off
Yes.
of a Zoom
Of
meeting or whatever.
Teams.
So
Yeah,
now or
yeah.
Teams or whatever. So now he's got like credits that go up, and every person involved is him, Scott Hanselman.
Yeah.
Creative director,
Yeah.
Scott Hanselman. Talent,
Cat sitter.
Scott Hanselman. Cat sitter, yeah. It
Or he
scrolls
called
up.
it something with cat. Anyway, yeah, it's because it is awkward. You never
It
know.
is.
Do I end first?
Yeah.
The other person. It's a lot.
Am
of,
I rude if I just click leave?
Yeah.
And then
Do
you
you
have
have
to
pants
wait for
on?
the second button. And while you're waiting to press that second button, everybody's just kind of going,
Or you're just like, is it now okay?
some of the funniest moments on .NET Rocks have been stuff like this. Oh, is my mic on? What happens if I click? Back when we were using Skype, it would bonk all the time. And the funniest thing ever was, I can't remember who we were interviewing, but he goes, oh, here's the coolest thing. The most important thing, I totally forgot to say this, is that, and Rich and I just
Oh, the
laughed.
cliffhanger.
And we left it in because it was so funny. It was like perfectly timed. Just like nothing. Radio silence.
Oh, the cliffhanger.
Did you ever find out what it was?
Yeah. He called back and we had a good laugh over it, but we didn't take it out. We just left it in because it was so funny.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, at least you got to know what the coolest thing was.
Right.
I would be furious. That
The
would
most
infuriate
important
me.
thing is. Yeah.
Yeah, it's awkward days.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's good to talk to you guys. I'll tell you that. It's fun to just have a little one-on-one time. My wife Kelly has been making a habit of doing this, and maybe you guys I can pass it on as a good idea. But every day, she calls somebody who's in her friend list or contact list she hasn't talked to in a long time, just to say hi and how you doing, check up. And now, after the conversation, she says, "Okay, now I'm passing it to you. Tomorrow, I want you to do the same thing and just call somebody that you haven't talked to in a long time. Hey, how's it going? You know, just want to be with people, want to talk to people."
I love that.
Yeah, it's a great.
No reason.
Great. Yeah, because we forget because.
Mm.
Most of our friends and acquaintances we meet in the speaker circle. We meet them at conferences. We meet them at events.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden we have no events. So we have no friends anymore. Well, we have friends, but we don't see them. And
We don't see them. Yeah.
I mean, last time we saw you, that was over a year ago.
Yeah.
Yep. That's right.
It's interesting.
So keep the fires burning. Call your friends. Call your mom. Just because.
Yeah.
You don't need a reason.
Just an intimate chat between the three of you and 10 other people, and everyone who will watch the video on demand afterwards.
Yep.
Yep, that's how we roll.
Yeah. Very good. So how often do you guys do this stream? Every day? Every week, rather?
Right now it's been 2 times every week.
Yeah.
Since
Oh.
we started up again in February, or January.
I don't even know.
I don't even know anymore. Yeah. Last year we did once a month.
Yeah. And so it's after work. So this is it started at 7:30 or so, or
yeah,
your
Swedish
time,
local time.
Yeah.
So it started with a use group called Coding After Work, and it was like coding, and it was after work, but it was also an after work.
Yeah.
So it was everything just worked together.
Yeah.
And the name comes from, I mean, people that are passionate about code that are coding even after work.
Yeah.
So that's how it all got started.
What
But
if you don't
what we're
have work
talking-
hours? What if you just have hours? That's coding
Isn't
anytime.
Coding,
Isn't
yeah.
that kind of the life of a coder?
So we have the
Yeah.
option of coding or coding after work. We have both options.
Yeah.
So you're saying that I need to buy a domain?
You don't need any more domains.
You have
We have them all. And those
know,
that you don't have, he has them.
Most couples argue about you spend too much money on Amazon.
Yeah.
You know, you don't need more stuff. Jimmy has a domain problem, apparently.
He has. And he can't get away with it either because I'm the one that does all the bookkeeping. So I keep seeing the renewals like, hey, last year it was 25.
Right.
So I have a domain that I'm really, I thought it was super, super good.
In Swedish.
It says reallygood.com. But
amazingly good.
Amazing,
maybe.
yeah. But in Swedish, that's ass bra.
Can't really use that anymore, can you?
So,
what a visual.
That might not be.
He has not used that yet.
Bra.
For
Forget
some
about
reason,
the
it's not
domain. You
used.
should make a product.
Oh my gosh, I think there are products like that though, like butt cheeks lifters.
Maybe
and
they
stuff
will
like
buy my
that.
domain.
You
Lift
should
and
contact
separate.
them. No, stop it! You cannot use it. Yeah, okay. So we warned you in the beginning that this will derail.
Oh, I can't go on. Oh.
So apparently you two are speaking afterwards about this domain.
All right. We are closing our
Yeah,
end time. Maybe
we
we
are.
should talk about the next one, which is
Yeah.
on Thursday.
We have a bunch
Where-
of cool stuff.
Yeah, where the good people of Wilderness Labs are going to join us and talk about how we can develop for IoT devices using C#. Which is
Nice.
kind of cool.
Yeah.
And we've already established that both you guys love C#.
That's true. That's true.
And apparently also
Gadgets.
gadgets and IoT.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It is
Love
the
IoT.
Meadow board. It is. It's a tiny little...
Why don't you guys
See if I
switch
can-
our views so people
There
can
we
see
go.
you bigger?
Oh, you mean you're smart.
There you go.
There we go. So there's this little
Huh.
gadget, and that's the Wilderness Labs. So they started as a startup, a Kickstarter, right?
It
Yeah.
was people that worked on Xamarin that started the company and developed. So I think it's actually running mono on the device,
Excellent.
Yeah, a tiny little device.
or a
Yeah.
version of it at least.
I like it.
So that will be interesting to see what we can do.
Mhm.
You can
Thursday?
finally use it.
That's
Yes.
Thursday. Yeah.
Same time.
Thursday, 7:30 Swedish time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool.
Exactly. Awesome.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. It was fun.
Thanks. And thank you everybody who joined us. We will see you next time.